Thank you very, very much. And I'm just delighted to be with you all. I know that you have gathered people together to commemorate the tragic passing of Sylvester da Cunha, who, of course, had an impact on my family's life because of his very close association with my father, my late father, Chandran Tharoor. They were roughly the same age. My father was very slightly older. But they were friends and colleagues in the Advertising Club of Bombay. My father was the secretary of it. Sylvester was the editor of the in-house magazine Solus. Sylvester was hired by Amul, by Mr. Kurian, to be the advertising agency for their Amul baby food campaign, to promote it. This is way back in 1961. And Sylvester da Cunha's agency was called ASP, which stood for Advertising and Sales Promotion Limited. And they were just looking for what they wanted to have. They wanted to consider the perfect baby to be the image of the Amul milk powder. It's a first of its kind campaign. Amul was the first milk powder for babies in India. So they wanted something really big. And they went through hundreds of pictures of babies. In fact, da Cunha later issued an illustrated ad in one of the advertising trade publications showing some of the 712 pictures that he had gone through before he chose one. And how did he come to choose one? He had not been happy with any of the 712 pictures. And he asked my father, "You have a baby too, don't you? Mind if you show me a picture?" My father did, and Sylvester was absolutely thrilled. He came, met my sister, decided she would be the first ever Amul baby. And Shobha actually then was photographed by no less an eminence, a later eminence than Sham Benegal. It was Sham who took the picture of the first ever Amul baby as a photographer in those days. So it was a moment of being sort of touched by greatness, the great later cinematographer and director, and the late great ad personality in Sylvia da Cunha. And Shobha's becoming the first Amul baby was a major story in the family, though not terribly well remunerated from what I remember. But that is a different matter. I think she was too young to care. A year later, they decided they wanted a color baby. Shobha was a black and white baby, and they were going to have a color campaign. And that time, Shobha was too old to pose for one because she was already 2 years old. But her sister Smita had been born. And this time, she was picked as the first ever color Amul baby. So it was a lot of fun for the family to have this association with Amul. Are you able to hear me? There is a sound problem?
We are not able to hear you.
5 minutes. I think the problem may be at your end, because at my end, you're not able to hear me at all.
I can hear you perfectly well, Shashi.
Just tested my speaker.
Yeah.
Now it is clear.
If you can hear a ringtone, that was a ringtone of my sister testing the speaker and the sound. So it's all working. I don't know what to suggest. There may be a problem at your end.
No. It is clear. It's clear. Yeah, it's clear.
You are able to hear now?
Yes.
Do you want me to start again?
No. Continue.
You were able to hear what I said so far?
Just the last 2-3 minutes.
So I just was saying, I was telling the story of how Shobha was picked as the first Amul baby. It was a black and white campaign to begin with. And a year later, it was my sister Smita who was picked as the first color Amul baby. Smita is a year and a half younger than Shobha. And so she came of age at the right time to be picked for that. Now, I must say that though all this may sound rather trivial today, it meant a great deal to the family. And the Amul ads were not just published in newspapers, which in those pre-television days had much more reach and impact. But they were also printed as posters and displayed in groceries and kirana stores across the country, wherever Amul powder was stocked. And even 30 years later, Smita was startled to discover a picture of her baby self still displayed on the wall of a rural provision shop in some dusty, forgotten corner of the country. So it was a campaign that in many ways marked them out. And I think it inspired my mother to encourage my sisters to subsequently go into modeling, which they were, I think, relatively reluctant to do. But Shobha can talk about that herself. She ended up being a beauty queen very briefly before going on to higher studies in America. The association with Sylvester da Cunha thereafter was principally between him and my father. He persuaded my father to write a column for the Advertising Club's magazine Solus. And my father, for whatever reason, decided he was not going to write it under his own name. So he adopted a pseudonym with the same initials. He wrote as Cecil Tree. And so you can still find all these. He apparently found that the Gaelic origins of Cecil corresponded to the Sanskrit origins of Chandran, and Tharoor sounded close enough to the Sanskrit word taru, which meant tree. So he took that pseudonym, and his column, which he and Sylvie, I think, were very proud of, ran for many years. They stayed in touch as friends, and amusingly enough, years later, when Sylvie da Cunha had retired and was the patriarch of the family, and his son Rahul was running the Amul brand campaign, Rahul da Cunha reached out to me. This must have been 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a little more, asking whether I would write something to commemorate a particular anniversary. I can't remember if it was the 50th anniversary of the Amul campaign, in which case that's a dozen years ago, or whether it was something else. But I did sit down and write a reminiscence of my association with them. And I would say there's one more thing worth particularly complimenting Sylvie da Cunha on. And that is undoubtedly the Amul ads that have gone well beyond pictures of attractive babies and baby food. The Amul ads were not just published in newspapers, but as you know, particularly in major cities now, there are hoardings of the Amul cartoons where the slogan "utterly, butterly, delicious," which was coined by Sylvie da Cunha, has become a completely sort of internalized phrase for most English-speaking Indians. And the cartoons have been topical. They've been very cleverly drawn consistently for many, many decades. They have a tongue-in-cheek caption, usually involving a pun, and I'm told Sylvie da Cunha was very fond of puns, including bilingual ones, jokes from Hindi. And whereas for many, many years, my sisters were the only Amul babies in the family, I have been a victim of some of these Amul hoarding cartoons. So I've also enjoyed the experience of being part of the Amul ads. And I must say that each of these ads captures the essence of the space that Amul has carved for itself in our public imagination. And that's to Sylvie da Cunha's credit, because he found an iconic idea, put that idea out in the public space, but did so with a lot of humor and a lot of panache. And the fact is that the cartoon ads have now become far more famous in many ways than the photographic ads of babies. I would say that that impact on sort of what the country is talking about in a particular week is what marks out Sylvie da Cunha's distinctive contribution. Because the campaigns are inspired and clever, and that you can expect a clever ad man to do. But they've gone beyond that to chronicle social change in our country by taking really topical subjects week after week or fortnight after fortnight. They've commented on politics, but without causing offense. They've taken the sting out of media controversies. They've been quick, they've been sharp, they've been topical. And in the same time, they advanced the product because they put Amul in the forefront of the reader's mind. And they've literally brought the product home to the hearts and minds, and not just the stomachs and the palates of Indian consumers. That, I think, is to Amul's distinction and Sylvie da Cunha's contribution. And as he has now left us, It's an occasion to remember a truly significant figure of the advertising industry, a man whose contribution is very, very difficult to parallel, let alone to rival. And I extend through you all not only this memory of his contribution, but also my admiration to him personally, and of course to his family, my condolences at their tragic and irreplaceable loss. Thank you very much. And may Sylvie da Cuna's soul rest in peace.
Yeah. Yes, I'm good. Ma'am, can you hear us? Yeah,
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah, ma'am, you can start your.
Namaskaram. Well, I'm surprised to be asked to speak, but yes, you're right, and Shashi is correct. I am the first Amul baby, and the first thing I want to say is that on behalf of our mother, who is still here and speaks of Sylvie da Cunha fondly because he used to come home for her doshas when he and Daddy were good friends in Bombay. And she sends her condolences, as do I, and as Shashi has, to both Rahul and Sylvie da Cunha's wife, Nisha da Cunha, whose own stories and writing I've enjoyed over the years. So I was going to say that for me personally, Sylvie da Cunha was a legend. And what I mean by that is, legends are created, they create their legacy by living their life on a day-to-day basis. And he built his legendhood in some ways, or his legacies, by living a life that all of us looked up to in terms of if you were in media or in advertising. Even I, as a little child, grew up remembering the names of Sylvie da Cunha as being this big advertising, larger than life person. And so that was the exciting thing about his name. I can't really say that I did any other advertising campaigns with him later on as an adult. It is true that there was a brief period between, I think, class 10 ICSC and 11 and 12 when, I did a little bit of modeling only because it was fun and it was pocket money. And I took some classes at the Alliance Française with that money. I did do a, Tata, not Tata tea, but a Taj Mahal tea, which I think was a rival probably. Taj Mahal tea, Bata, and a few little campaigns like that. But they were not for Sylvie da Cunha's own company. He started his own company, moved away from ASP, I think, after a few years of being in ASP. But I did grow up and, never really used the story of Amul or even remembered it until Shyam Benegal came to California, where I live, and had brought one of his films. I think it was either Manthan or one of those award-winning films. And when I was chatting with my mother on the phone, she said, "You have to go and say hi to Shyam Benegal." I said, "Amma, I can't keep all these big people. I can't just show up and go stand in long lines to go say hello to them. I'm not going to do that." She said, "No, you are his first Amul baby and you have to say hello." And so for the first time, not to disappoint my mother, I stood in a long line to shake hands with Shyam Benegal. And that was the first time I was obviously meeting him since I was a toddler. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hello, Mr. Benegal, I am your Amul baby." And it was sort of embarrassing for me, and I was probably a little silly about it. But he was so excited. And I said, "I was your first Amul baby." And he said, "Oh my God, you are Chandran's daughter." And I still remember telling my brother at that time, I'm so used to being called Sasi Tharoor's sister, but this was the first time that Shashi's name was not mentioned at all. They said, "You are Chandran's daughter." He gave me a big hug. He grabbed my hand, took me all the way to another room and introduced me to his wife. So I then realized, what a close family the whole advertising world was. And when I wrote the book about my mother, Good Innings, it gave me a chance to sort of relive through my mother's stories and all of that beautiful sort of fellowship and camaraderie that all of these people in media and advertising and theater and, the creative arts in Bombay in those days, the kind of life that they all shared, that they were all such good friends. So for me, it's those memories that I remember. Unfortunately for me, as I said, I didn't really do any other campaigns with Sylvie da Cunha. In fact, I know that he came home for dinners, but my father had quite English manners and the children didn't wander around when adults were there for dinner. And so we were in our bedrooms, and the aunties and uncles who knew us well would come in and say hello. But the rest of us, the rest of the guests were in the living room, and we didn't really get to see them. But as I said, the memory of him and the fact that he was a larger-than-life man, the fact that he took a look at a little girl's face and thought she was someone worth sort of putting to print was quite lovely. And so that is my memory. I felt very sad when I heard he passed away. He lived a long and wonderful and creative life, but it's always hard for us to let go of our legends, isn't it? And so I just want to say, as Shashi did, rest in peace, Sylvie de Cunha. I wish we'd had a chance to meet again. Our family remembers you fondly, and Daddy is up there waiting to have a drink with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasi Tharoor MB and Shobha Tharoor. It's a great privilege and honor for us, all of us here in Kochi, and also to our Pepper Creative Awards Trust to have you both. It was a real pleasure listening to you also, the experiences, especially Shobha ji, really enjoyed it, and we are very, very grateful to you, and for Kuti also for arranging this program. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Best, and enjoy the rest of your meeting. I know it's not enjoyable. I mean, it's an important and sad meeting, but all the very best to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.